And we are live with episode 24 of the PHU Dynasty podcast. I'm here with my usual co-host, Sean O'Shea. And this week we have a guest owner. I can't disclose the team name because that may be something discussed in this episode. It's Vincent Padronani's here with us as well. And we are here to do a rookie draft for the 2021 recap where we've kind of discussed we're not going to be doing grades because it's just well too soon for that, and you can't quite put a grade on some of these players that don't really have a full couple of seasons to judge them on. So we're just going to go ahead and talk about it, each pick by pick, and kind of give our thoughts and what we think for the outlook for those players moving forward and what they did last year as well. So we got quite a bit of stuff as well to talk about on this podcast. I'm actually going to lead it off because I noticed right before we went live here that we have all of the votes for the rule changes. So we can go ahead and drop those right here. And we have 10 out of 10 votes now. So I can go ahead change by change and let you all know. Maybe we can even talk about the rule changes. What do you think about them? So let's go ahead and do the first one. And
what was the standard for something passing, by the way?
So it was 7 votes are needed. 7 yes votes are needed to pass. So if there's not 7, it ain't going through. So the first one is no trade deadline for active playoff teams. And that one did not pass. It was 6 yeses and 4 nos. So that was question number 1 on the survey. Number 2 was revise quarterback passing interceptions from -1 to -2. And that passed with 7 votes and had 3 no votes. So that one's going to be a change for next year. And I guess that would kind of hurt, Alex's team with, Trevor Lawrence throwing quite a few picks. I think that might be an issue for him. But that's one of the changes that has passed so far. Next, we have the 2 practice squad options that were brought up for this year, and neither of those passed. So we had for the first one, which was the year-long one, that was 5 votes yes, 5 votes no. And for the off-season one, that was 6 votes yes, 4 votes no. So neither of those passed. Raise the buy-in from $25. That was a unanimous 10 votes to raise it. So we will be raising the buy-in from 25. And we'll discuss that exact amount at a later date.
I'm surprised Alex and Tibbs voted yes on that.
They're not cowards.
They're good league mates. Those are good league mates.
They're good teammates. Yeah, I voted yes years ago when my team was trash. So
at least they were going for the best interest of the league. Good for them.
Correct.
We appreciate those kind of guys. Then we have remove kickers as a position that had 4 yes votes and 6 no votes. So that one's not going through.
Stupid.
Every year they come up. Every single year. And weekly payout to the team with the highest potential points was voted 1 vote with yes and 9 for no.
My issue with this one is potential points. I don't like rewarding potential. You got to start those guys. You got to get them out there. If it was highest score, I would have voted yes. But because it was potential points, I don't want to reward you benching it up.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense to me, too. I just thought, the one positive, I guess, would be just to keep the lower teams active. But we really don't have that issue in our league with people like truly tanking, benching people they're not supposed to be benching.
And the way it kind of goes too is the people who are so bad, the chances of them getting. I think Alex's potential high was 130. No, that was his high of the year. Was like in the.
I think Tibbs had 1 week with like decent numbers, but they
like
were never the highest.
148 potential.
Yeah, they were never they were never the highest though at any given point.
No, definitely not. But so I see what you were going for, but still.
Adding 1 additional IR slot did pass with a 7-3 vote. Okay. So you're going to get 5 IR slots this year instead of 4. And then we got 2 more. So we have the removed defense and special teams. That was 2-8 with 2 yeses. So that is not passing. I think I would side more with the kickers out of the two of those. I mean, defenses I still think should be in the league, but I would vote yes on removing kickers personally. But we've had this discussion quite a few times.
So real quick, Justin actually brought some new perspective to me the other day, and he said that like with our league being as deep as it is, a lot of the roster moves are made that you have to cut like a younger fringe prospect to pick up that defense or that kicker, and so it helps really keep the waivers active with a good kind of like churn. If we got rid of those spots, then there would be at least probably 3 players on each team that would get picked up. So then it would be 30 new players off of waivers, and there would be a lot less waiver activity, I think. So I think for the sake of waivers, I think it's just a good thing to have them. But I can understand why you want to get rid of them with the randomness and all that. There's absolutely merit in that as well.
I think when you do bring that point up and we have as many roster spots as we already do, and then now we're going to add another IR slot, so you could potentially have 35 people on your team and then take away a kicker, and then Scavelli's got like 10 of those. So it's like, I mean, that's going to be, you're talking like 30, like you said, almost 30 extra players potentially getting picked up. So yeah, that I do understand that.
We almost ran into that into the Galactic League. I think like right before the draft, I asked you why we had so many roster spots because we don't have defense or kickers in that league.
No,
right? We don't have either. That was more of an experimental league, if you will.
Yeah, I think it was a 30-man roster as well.
It's almost the exact same setup.
Nobody left.
Yeah, so there's pretty thin over there, especially with the two quarterbacks deal. There's not a whole lot to choose from.
So
number 10 is changing the waiver system to FAB with the $100 start right before or right after the waiver draft, and that did not pass. That was 3 votes yes and 7 no. So the FAB was not.
No.
I can't imagine that Tibbs and Alex would vote yes on that one, just based on the overall standings and what we think is going to look like for the next couple of years. So I expected at least 2 no votes or 2 no's there. Yeah. So that one did not pass. So the only ones to pass were the additional IR slot and the buy-in, and I believe the quarterback passing interceptions from 1 to 2 negative. So that's it. So 3 or 4 of them passed out of 10, and there you go. That's the rule changes, and I'll put them in a sleeper ASAP. And everybody can enjoy their extra IR slot to, I know Dustin probably voted for that one because he's got all these Jagaloons he's always worried about his roster crunch. So let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of the podcast this week. So we're talking about the rookie report card. But before we get to that, we have a very, very special announcement here on the podcast. This is breaking news to the PHU media, as Dan once called it. And I will let Vince go ahead and discuss this right now. It's a team name change. So here we go.
As owner, general manager, head coach, and #1 fan of the franchise, it brings me great pleasure to announce our relocation to Fort Lauderdale and our new mascot, Petey. We know our loyal fans in Bonerville have a full chub about the future of this team, and we look forward to their continued support. And we're excited for the off season in the future. And
you gotta love
this is our logo, keeping the same color scheme. We're switching to lion head rabbits, and we're in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, I like the color scheme so much. I was happy when you told me that you didn't want to change the color scheme because I think it's one of the most unique in the league, first of all. And then, I mean, just look at that sleeper icon. That is going to be menacing every single week. You got to play these beautiful rabbits. I'm here for it.
I'm excited about it.
I'm excited for it too. So we have a new team name here. We don't have any other ones planned as far as I'm aware. So this should be it as far as team name changes for this offseason. So now that that's out of the way, we can go ahead and start our first segment, which is everyone's favorite. Name that bust. Name that bust, everyone. So here we go. So it's going to be Vince versus Sean this time. I believe James won last week, Sean. Is that true?
I think so.
With the Monty Ball special.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So get those busts in your head Think about busts. Think about Alex's team. Think about things.
This
that
is a year
reminded you
range
of
is
busts.
only in the dynasty. Like it would have been drafted in this dynasty league, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
So there's
No Pat Whites or anything. All right.
there's no craziness there. So
Naji Harris.
let's go ahead and start off.
We just go by like line, and once you say a line, we say whether we have a guess or not, and then we just keep
Yeah,
going.
it's kind of like a Wheel of Fortune, where you're like, all right, you got any guesses? All right, let's find out. So here we go with the first slide. So it was drafted by the Chili Cheese Fries. So this could be a number of busts. There's lots of busts out there.
But nothing in recent years because he had no draft picks.
was gonna say,
That's
this
something
really
to think
does narrow
about.
it
That does whittle it down quite a bit. So are there any guesses so far? Just to see if you got a random shot in the dark.
I'm gonna take a. No, keep going. Roll it. I have some ideas, but I don't want to shoot them
All right,
out
we're
yet.
going to the next one. The next one, he was drafted in the 2013 rookie draft, which was
Is
the
he a Tennessee
draft that-
receiver?
Yes.
Is it to Rick Rogers?
It is not to Rick Rogers. It's a great guess.
Okay.
So that's your guess for this
That's it
slide.
for this
Sean. Do you have
round,
a-
yeah.
do you have a-
Kenny Britt?
It is not Kenny Britt, although
He didn't go to
another
Tennessee. I think he went to
quality
Rutgers.
Tennessee guess. So let's go to the next slide.
Oh,
since
you're
this
talking about
helps out.
Titans receiver. I didn't realize
Yes.
you were talking about. Oh.
Well, technically, yeah, both those. Rick Rogers went to both Tennessees.
Yeah, I was thinking Tennessee, the college.
Oh.
Well, that applies. So here we go. So played the majority of his career with the Titans. So we'll skip that one and give you. He's a wide receiver because
Killing
you.
me. Oh, I can't remember his name, but as soon as you say it, I'm
All right,
gonna
here
know.
comes one more slide. Played college at Tennessee.
We
The
really
last
got
one.
this
I
fast.
just can't remember their name.
Now does that help?
No,
That doesn't help.
I just can't think of the names at all right now.
This guy was a colossal bust, though. He-
I want to say Tyler Wilson, but it's only because I'm looking at Sean.
It's not
Future
Tyler Wilson.
episode.
I will here. Let me give you another hint off the top of my head. He was a second-round pick in the NFL draft, and he was a. I want to say he was a late first-round pick in
Wait.
our draft.
Was it Jalen Hurd? But didn't he go to the Texans?
No, that was way
Was he on that
later.
team? No.
This one, Boba Fett is a bounty blank.
Oh, Justin Hunter?
Oh,
Justin Hunter.
Hunter.
That is correct.
My
Justin
God.
Hunter, colossal.
I said I
bust.
knew he was one of those
People are
Tennessee
weird.
receivers because I knew Tibbs had a hard dick for them back then. I just can't remember the names because they're so irrelevant.
Yeah, it was Cordero Patterson, Rick Rogers, Justin Hunter, and some other guy, some white guy named Zach something. I can't remember his full name.
I
but
want to say Cordero, but I know you had him. So
he
you
was
drafted
also
him.
in that draft. I think he was picked just after him. It's crazy. There was three Tennessee receivers drafted that year. It's pretty wild. So anyway, that's the name of that bust. I think Sean got that one. So we're gonna give Sean the W this week. See if
I feel like neither of us earned it.
that was. I mean, you may have gotten a couple extra hints than planned. So we'll let it slide. Maybe you get a 0.5 victories for that one.
That's
So name that
fine.
bust. We'll try to come up with something fun next time. So we got Monty Ball and Justin Hunter for the first two. So
Man, what a
all
start.
right. So let's get into this rookie report card. This is what I've been hyping the whole episode. So let's go ahead and do it. So we're gonna go through the first slide. I believe is the first and second round, and then the third and fourth round will be on the next slide. So we can just go pick by pick, and I'll ask y'all what your thoughts on last year was and how you think their outlook looks. So we got right out the gate everyone's favorite
Naji Harris.
Harris. So we have who is not with his current team. So he was traded, obviously, in the most surprising, arguably, trade. Could that be the most surprising trade in our league's history?
I don't know about that because there have been
Like,
some
just given the
real
timing?
crazy ones, but I would say that it was one of the most puzzling trades in terms of like I just didn't. It was tough to see what either team was going for making the trade. So yeah,
I mean,
from that
just the
standpoint, it really
timing
was
was-
shocking.
Like, both teams being involved was the first thing for me, but it was just like, I think it was like on a random like Wednesday night, and I was like, I just got here, like I was just sitting down to play some Battlefront or something.
Had
And
to have
it
an
was, oh my
emergency
God, what happened?
podcast. It was brutal.
I know. I forgot about the emergency podcast.
We had to have an
already,
emergency
too.
podcast, and then we had to have another emergency podcast when Alex had to defend the pick 4 days later because he knew it was so
a
bad.
second State of the
The
Union.
media
actually.
outlash was brutal, and he knew he needed to respond.
He needed
So this
a
trade
PR.
was just weird for me because if this trade was going to happen, I don't know why it didn't happen when Dustin had all those picks. He had 3 first-round picks last year. I think it was 4, 7, and 9 or 10, 4, 7, and 10 because you had 10. You gave him.
Yeah, it's 4, 7, and 10 on our screen here too.
So that would have made a lot more sense to happen then. Then Dustin could start his season with Naji Harris, and Alex could trade back to 1-4 and get maybe pick up some other picks, even a future here or there if he wanted. And that would have made sense. But once Dustin was 1-3, it felt like a Hail Mary to try and save the season. And for Alex, it's like, what are we doing? When are we competing? When are we going to actually put ourselves out there? When we have the best team on paper, but that usually doesn't come first. You usually have to put yourself out there and grow. So I don't know where we're going.
If I remember correctly, as soon as he traded for him, I think that wasn't that like his weakest part of his year too, Harris.
I don't remember exactly when the trade was, but he had a run from like weeks 4 to 8 that were really quality. And then he had a bye week in between there somewhere too. But then after week 10, he kind of slowed down quite a bit as far as his fantasy output. But
the
regardless,
trade happened October 7th, by the way. Just so.
Okay, so that was probably like what, week 6-ish?
Yeah, like 5 or 6 for sure. Yeah, because we started on September 11th.
Week 7 bye.
Okay, it was earlier than I thought. I thought
he was 1-3 at the time when Dustin did it, so it was going into week 5.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just to talk about Naji Harris, just his actual fantasy production, I truly believe that this was one of the worst seasons I've ever seen. Like,
he just got overloaded with volume, and it made it look like a good season, but his average was atrocious.
He was like 3.9. I'm looking at it right now. It's the 3.97 yards or yards per carry, and then his yards per target was 4.97, which is abysmal out of the backfield. And this, to my opinion, is that this really isn't much of his fault, is as much as it is the Pittsburgh Steelers offense.
I mean, there's some his fault. We can't completely absolve him, but he's not going to say, "Don't throw me the ball." He's going to catch those terrible shallow routes and do the best he can with it. I don't think it's an indictment on the future of Najee. I think the biggest indictment on it was that he had 370 total touches, was I think the final tally. That kind of wear and tear in a throwaway year for the Steelers, that sucks, but that's the only thing that's coming out of this that's a downside. As long as they're not running with Mason Rudolph, they should have an upgrade at quarterback, and it should look like an uptick for Naji Harris going forward.
Yeah, the quarterback and the line.
You can't look at the raw stats for him. He passes the eye test. Like, if you watch Pittsburgh, like, it takes like the second, third tackler to bring him down pretty much every time.
And every time I watched him, he was getting smacked like 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage every single time. Like, I had him in redraft, and it was frustrating as hell to watch his games because, like, all right, like, yes, we see the wiggle, we see the juice, like, we can see him run over some guys, but it's like he never had any chances to really get going. And when he did break a long run, I was like, oh shit, there it is. Like, I knew he had it. It's just a matter of getting the opportunities that are quality rather than 300 carries of just garbage. Basically, it's just there wasn't a whole lot to work with. And there was no downfield threat this year. Yeah, no downfield threat.
No, Ben was no downfield threat. They had downfield threats. Ben can't throw downfield. I think that's more accurate because he was just dinking and dunking the whole fucking year.
And like when you have all those guys in the box, you're just fucked. Like the only guy that I've seen that could blow through boxes like that is Jonathan Taylor at this point. So, I mean, he's gonna be at least as good as he was this year, in my opinion. I mean, if they give him the same workload, of course.
Yeah, I think he'll have a similar workload, and I think he'll still be a low end fantasy one.
All right, let's go to the next two. So we got Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts for the Bombers, and
this should have been get one, and Alex should have just rode out with Jamar Chase, but that's a different story. I mean, for me, we're gonna talk about the Bombers having these picks and these players, and nothing to say, but the future is bright. It's looking great.
Yeah, I mean, Chase is. I mean, most of the startup mocks that I've seen, he's at least in the top 3 of the first round. Usually it's Jonathan Taylor, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase at this point. And to get him at number 2 in a rookie draft when his team, in my opinion, has always been at least solid, the Bombers. They've always at least been solid. To get 2 blue chip elite players that in a startup draft, probably both these guys go in the, I mean, Kyle Pitts probably goes, what, in the 4th round or so, would you say?
I would take
At
him
least?
earlier, probably. Even
like
now,
top
I mean,
40
like, now that we
picks.
weathered the rookie year, depending on kind of where we're going to go with the Falcons off season a little bit, I think he can go earlier. He's so young. He looked great. Yeah, these are 2 slam dunk long term players for Justin, and if we factor in the fact that he also is Joe Burrow, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah, now he's got the stack. And Kyle Pitts, it seemed like he didn't wow you as much as you might think, but like he had so many just solid performances.
I mean, if we're going to make the argument for Naji Harris with team, I think Kyle Pitts has an even better argument because that team had nothing on both sides of the ball. And I don't even think they were playing to win most of the time. They did have a shocking amount of competitive games, believe it or not. But still, I think it was really just Matt Ryan trying to keep everyone in the game because he has nothing. He has to play. But it seemed like that team was just wandering through most of their season. I think Kyle Pitts is gonna. I think all these top 3 players, actually top 4 even. I think all of them are gonna have a nice sophomore season.
If Calvin Ridley comes back, is that better or worse for Kyle Pitts next year?
I think it's better overall long term, but I think from a fantasy short term perspective, the raw targets are nice. But long term, you want him to be able to get in the flow of more of kind of not getting double coverage all the time.
Yep.
And he's got 1 touchdown this year. That was the crazy thing. Like he might take over as the new Julio, just all these yards and no touchdowns. I mean, it could very well be the case, but I expect at least 4 or 5 touchdowns next year. I mean, that has to go up, and there's no way that they're going to go into this offseason not saying that they're going to get this guy more red zone touches.
I think they'll have a new quarterback, and I think the new quarterback will be a younger guy who will want to use his tight end as a safety blanket. So I think Pitts has a bright future.
All right, let's move forward. Keep this thing going. We got Javonte Williams at 1.4 to our guests here. The new lion heads. I don't have the logo in there. I apologize for that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'll let you guys talk about them. I don't want to talk about my own son.
Well, I could at least start saying that I've always loved Javonte. Prior to the draft, he was one of my guys. I was like, there's no way I was going to get him, but I loved him. And I think I talked to Vince about this before the draft as well. I was like, we both just love the guy. And he's just the prototype banger. Just get the hell downhill, screw some guys up. I believe he had some of the most yards after contact numbers out of the entire league. And he had a couple of phenomenal games when Gordon was hurt. So I can't imagine they bring back Gordon. So
even if they do, the capacity, I think the contract will be telling at how much they plan to use him. I mean, I don't think in the running back or in the NFL with running back, you're going to have some guys back there. It's about how many expected carries you would say that we would think that they're going to have. So, I mean, I think regardless of what happens, I think Javonte had a good enough rookie year because I don't think a lot of us thought he would even be as involved as he was. So I think he'll only get more targets and carries next year, and depending on who the quarterback is, there could be a lot of touchdowns as well.
Yeah, I'm going to hit you with a lot of ifs. So if they get another running back in there that's like a Latavius Murray type where he's like serviceable, but like he's going to play like 30% of snaps.
Like a Kenyon Drake.
If they get a solid quarterback plus best case scenario, probably Aaron Rodgers, he could be the number 1 running back next year.
I think his upside is extremely high and might be one of the highest out of all the running backs right now. And the real thing I've noticed just poking around different dynasty sites, like if you want to try to acquire Javonte Williams right now, you might as well just not bother. Like he's just going to be
the moon.
Valuable.
I mean, he was at one point on a keep trade cut. He was the 5th overall running back. And even for me, I was like, it's dastardly. But a lot of guys fell off and died this year, and it made the younger guys' value rise up. I mean, even in wide receiver, that kind of happened to a degree. in Dynasty, we've seen the value of having a young guy for 6 years and having 6+ years and having 6 chances at the championship is just, it's so valuable. And getting these guys young, taking the chance that they will be the player you see in college is just the cheapest way to do it, which is why I took the risk to go get them and why I won't have my pick this year.
Yep, totally worth it in my opinion. I mean, that's what you're shooting for. Is you got to have those bell cow running backs to win. We've always talked about this. Let's keep moving. We got Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence back to back for the Muskrats at 1-5 and 1-6. Obviously, Etienne blew out his leg prior to the season starting, and we don't know. I mean, I believe it was an ACL, so we don't know exactly what that situation is going to look like. We all assume it's Brian Leftwich.
The people that drafted him are gone already.
So Sean brought up the big point I was going to make. That was a reach pick, considered a reach pick by almost everybody, fantasy professionals, etc. And the guy who made that reach pick is gone. I know whoever is going to have that job, which I think will be Leftwich. They're absolutely going to utilize him because you have no choice. He's got a first-round contract and all that stuff. But it doesn't bode well that the guy who drafted him is gone, and it doesn't bode well that they're still one of the worst, most ineffective teams in the league, particularly on offense.
And assuming that Robinson comes back healthy, you're looking at a timeshare. So it's going to be, the upside is extremely limited, at least for next year. Who knows? Maybe Leftwich just falls in love with them and he turns into this Kamara type player or something. I don't know. It could happen. But
opportunities, everything. Maybe James Robinson doesn't come back as fast. And I looked it up. It was a Linsfranc for Travis Etienne. He had a Linsfranc foot injury. So maybe he comes back from his Linsfranc perfectly healthy, had the all off season. He hits it off with Trevor Lawrence, has a ton of pass receiving work. It could happen, but I think one thing Eric and I said before the pre-show is like a lot of these picks you got to talk about, like especially in the later ones, like would they return that value? And I think we're just starting to get to the first person. Like I don't know if you can get 1-5 for Trevor Lawrence today. Everyone else before them, you could get that pick back and then some.
Yeah, just like when
Travis Etienne, excuse me, and Trevor Lawrence, really, actually. I don't know if someone's trading 1-5 and 1-6.
Look at the players right below him. I mean, you got Devonte Smith, Jalen Waddle, Rashad Bateman, maybe not Sermon, but
not Sermon at all.
But there's 3 like very quality fantasy assets right there that, obviously Alex got one of them, but like to get one of those guys as a long-term option may be the safer pick and the better pick right now.
Definitely, but I'm not going to fault him on Travis Etienne. I hated Travis Etienne, but he got hurt, and that was the issue. Drafting into the Jacksonville is not the smartest, but still the injury is what really upset his value so far. So even though I don't think he could return 1-5 and I wouldn't have made the pick, I think he caught a bad break. However, that being said, I would have taken at least Devonta or Jalen Waddle, probably Devonta over him personally. However, we'll get to that, but kudos to Alex on the Waddle pick because that one's nice.
Yeah, I had Etienne on my board closer to 9 and 10. I just had some questions about his overall game and how his inability to run it through the tackles at times kind of bothered me. So like we still don't even know if he's good or not. Like that's the issue. We haven't seen anything. So
he was also like a one-trick pony. It was all about big burst plays in college, long runs and stuff, and those just don't happen as often as the NFL. Being his, like you said, his ability to hit the hole. I'm not a big fan of his either. We'll see what he can return value he can return.
I'm feeling like he and this is no comparison by any means, but like his game type, if it were to work out, would be like a Kamara. Like that's his ultimate ceiling if it was possible. But that's what like I saw at least was if it could happen, that would be nice. But obviously hasn't happened yet because it hasn't even had a chance. So Trevor Lawrence at 1-6. This was part of the trade with the former Swallows. And I believe the overall terms of the deal were what, Sean and Vince? Was it a first and a second round pick to move up, I believe?
So I received that 1-9 that became the definitive bust of now, Trey Sermon. And then I received 12 in this year's draft, and I received Alex's first in next year's draft.
Wow.
Pretty startling.
It is a startling thing to recall, and the fact that Lawrence literally did nothing this year. I think we talked about it on a previous podcast. There was a time when he didn't throw a touchdown from like 7 different weeks or something like that in a row. it's hard to judge him because that offense was just such an absolute shit show this year. That whole team was a shit show.
Yeah, the whole team, the coaching staff just.
But like you said earlier, if Leftwich comes in, that's probably one of the better guys to come in and teach him.
And to stabilize, he has clout in Jacksonville already, so I like that.
Absolutely. And you can't imagine that they're going to come out of the draft without. They have so many picks. They're going to get a couple of receivers to help them out. Tight ends probably.
I think Chark walks. I think they let Chark walk.
Chark's
I think they knew that LaVisca is not anything special. If he's our wide receiver 3, great, but we got to get 2 other guys in here.
Yeah, I mean Marvin Jones was kind of a flop considering some of the offseason hype that he got. Yeah. He's just washed at this point. So I think now you're still at year 0 with Lawrence. Like that last year was honestly just like a waste. So now this is a second rookie season for Lawrence, in my opinion. And it's sad, but that's what it's going to be. And in a 1 quarterback league, I can't justify this pick. I just can't do it right now. I'm not going to give it a grade because there's still too much time to see what could happen, but I'm just not a fan, especially 1 pick ahead of the next guy, Devonte Smith. And Sean is the resident Eagle fan. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Nice. Sean, talk to us about this guy. I loved him coming out, and I thought his rookie season wasn't that bad. So, what did you think about?
I'm going to make this point again when we get to pick 110, but he's going to be capped until his quarterback changes. But he can literally, if it's anywhere in his radius, he's catching that ball. So targets are going to be a big thing for him. Him and Goddard are going to eat up most of the offense, but I mean, he looked great. Like he's easily the best receiver we've had in Philadelphia since Macklin.
I was going to say Jeremy Macklin, maybe.
I think Deshaun Jackson, but
it's been a while without a good receiver there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get probably at least 1 more receiver to flank him through the draft or through free agency this year, because there's no way they could go into next year with that same rotating group of shitheads at number 2. So I think that actually helps him, if anything, to be honest, because he's going to need. I mean, luckily Goddard he was kind of banged up at times too this year, but Smith is kind of the guy that they want to put in the slot like they did in college. They had quite a few opportunities this year to do it, and like you saw, like when he had his chances, like you said, he caught pretty much everything thrown his way. And I've always kind of thought that if he was to hit his cap with his size and his deficiencies there, like he's kind of like a Marvin Harrison type of upside. So I haven't seen anything that would detract me from that right now to say that he still doesn't have that kind of upside. He does.
I mean, he's a plus in any wide receiver loadout you put him in.
No, and I think we get back to talking about guys who returned value. If you said, Vince, would you rather have 1-7 in this year's draft or Devonta Smith? I'm sprinting to the podium for Devonta Smith.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's a great value pick for 1-7 for sure. Let's keep moving. Just keep
same argument rolling here, though. Great value pick again. I mean, I think both these players. I can make an argument that these should have been 1, 5, and 6, and then put Etienne and Lawrence in these 2 spots, and these look a lot better.
I would agree there. Jalen Waddle, honestly, not a guy that I was super high on. I just tend to not like these kind of guys, but he looked really good, and he was a tremendous fit for a short passing attack with no time to throw. Basically, he was perfect for the Dolphins.
To Waddle connection was very real this year. We saw that when Brissett was in, he was not feeding really anyone. The offense was stagnant. When Tua came in, we can move the ball a little bit, and he loved to feed Waddle. And I think one of the things that I noticed this year is we didn't really use Waddle a lot, like how I watched him get used in Alabama. Not a lot of deep routes. It's a lot of shallow stuff, again, to compensate for the horrendous bottom of 32 out of 32 offensive line, the absolute worst. And I'm really excited. I think getting another receiver or 2 into Miami would really help, of course, with offensive line, that we can then use Waddle like how he was more used in college on some deep routes and deep posts and things like that. And I think sky's the limit for Waddle and Devonta Smith. I think these are, like I said, 2 excellent value picks, and I think they're both worth 2 firsts right now. I'd rather have both those players than 2 1-7s and 2 1-8s, quite frankly.
I'm gonna counter this a little bit because Alex traded into this pick too. So do you all remember what the trade was?
I do. It was the Mark Andrews trade. He moved back with Rondale and got Rondale Moore. Traded Mark Andrews. Like I said, I know the rough framework. It's part of my
I'll look at it
my rant on how bad Alex.
I haven't pulled up. I was just curious if you guys remembered it.
I don't.
So he traded away Mark Andrews and picked 2-1, which ended up being Rondale Moore. He got back 1-8, 2-8, and 3-8 in this draft. So,
and we'll get to his 2-8 and 3-8 because I think he hit on both those picks. But let's.
I don't want to be here, but I think it's smarter to just talk about these in a vacuum because we could be here all day talking about. We have a whole new podcast for if Alex just stuck and pick. And there's a universe like the Ricky Morty Voltiverse. There's a universe where Alex just didn't make any of these trades. He just stuck and pick, and his team is so much better for it. But
Absolutely.
He made all these moves thinking he could outsmart all 9 of us, and now his team is 3 years behind where it was at this time last year. Yeah, if he just sticks and picks, takes Jamar Chase, keeps Mark Andrews, we're talking about actually a legitimate team here.
Yeah, and it's a team that, like, I wouldn't say is contending or anything, but it looks a lot better on paper for sure.
Well, yeah, the rebuild's we're at least feel like we're in year 3 of a rebuild. I don't feel like I'm in year 3 of a rebuild right now. You look at this team, it looks like we're starting year 2, but really we're starting year 4.
I tend to agree with you there. Let's go ahead and keep moving. We got a lot more picks to talk about. We got 1-9. We got Trey Sermon.
Awful. I mean, I took a chance on a Shanahan running back, and it just didn't work out, plain and simple.
I've been burned there before, don't worry. I took Joe Williams back in the day at 211. Absolutely never played. It's just a classic.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had Rashad Bateman in his stead, but at the time, I was looking for people who would be hopefully home run hitters.
You wanted running backs.
Yeah, I wanted home run hitters when it would need it most. Like running backs were more likely. I was thinking like there's more likely a Shanahan running back is getting carries in December than it is a Baltimore receiver is lighting it up in December. And I just didn't feel like I needed.
He's not dead yet, though. Like,
he's not dead yet. It's a rookie on a 4-year deal. Like we'll give it some time. By training camp this year, I'll have a little bit of a clearer path. But yeah, right now he's a total bust. There's no sugarcoating it.
Rashad Bateman, you mentioned he had a couple of games, I believe, towards the middle of the season where he really looked great as the number 1 option. He had a couple of like 6-catch games with like 80 yards and like 100 yards. Looked really good. However, towards the beginning of the year, it was the Marquise Brown show there. So we kind of thought that, I mean, at least me, I thought that Bateman would be more of a alpha towards the beginning, and I guess he was hurt for the first 4 weeks too, but I was hoping to see more of Bateman being in the role that Brown was basically. That being said, the games that he did have towards the end of the year, he looked really good, and I am hyped to see him next year. I don't know how you guys feel about him.
You're sending a little too much hype for a guy who had 500 yards, but I like the player a lot. I think the biggest issue is what Sean said about a quarterback limiting him. I just don't see Lamar Jackson as that guy who can feed multiple receivers. And I think right now, Mark Andrews is one of his go-to guys. I think Bateman can become a go-to guy of his, but like I said, I think that upside is just a little bit limited. I'd still love him, and again, I think this is more than where if I had 110 this year, I'd trade it snap call for Rashad Bateman. I think it's a great pick. It's only going to increase in value, but it's just, having Ravens receivers is frustrating.
Yeah, this is probably the most they were ever going to pass this year, considering their situation with their offensive linemen and all their injuries to their running backs. So best case, he's the second option on this team for a team that runs the ball more than probably anybody will in the NFL. I like him. He's good, but I don't think he's going to be
more of an opportunity issue.
I don't see him breaking into like the top 36 receivers next year.
Ooh, that's a spicy one. Put that in a Dynabook. James, put that in the Dynabook for next year. That's a good one. I don't know, because I think he has the talent to totally be a top 30 receiver, even higher.
The talent's there.
And even I think in Baltimore, he could be top 30 in the right circumstances, but is it likely?
I do like the argument, though, like that Sean made. I mean, it's just that offense, who knows, like, Brown is still there too. It's not like they don't have any options. They have Mark Andrews and Brown, so it's kind of, it could even be considered a third option. It's just going to be a week to week type of deal with them.
Yeah, but I believe in the talent going forward, and that's half the battle in Dynasty, in my opinion.
Yeah, talent. You just kind of want to acquire talent and just see how it plays out most of the time. And I think Bateman's flashes were good enough to justify the pick as of right now. Let's go ahead to Rondale Moore, getting into the second round here. Rondale Moore, big flashes early in the season. What did you guys think of him?
He was so horrifically used in Arizona. So bad.
I'm not a big fan of him as a. I don't like that type of style of player. Those little guys who are supposed to be electric with the ball in their hand. They're just not the style I go for in Lauderdale. It's not what we look for. Or in Bonerville. I didn't like this pick at the time. I still don't think know if it'll pan out long term. But I understand it. I understand the logic for a player like this in a high-powered offense. It absolutely could work out. But it's not my cup of tea.
He honestly, he really should have flashed more, considering all of the injuries they had at receiver this year. That concerns me a lot.
Without Hopkins.
I also just don't trust Cliff Kingsbury. I just don't think he's as good as even probably he thinks he is. Like, he just seems like a guy that's full of shit to me. So I don't know. I can't get behind the offense right now. I definitely can't get behind the way they used him. I mean, he literally had that one game early in the year. He had like 46%. I'm looking at it right now, 46% of the snaps, and he had 8 targets for 114 yards and a touchdown, and then literally did nothing for the rest of the year. He was completely useless. So it's just like, what are you doing? Especially when you lost Hopkins, you lost, I think, what was it? Green was banged up a little bit. Kirk was banged up a little bit. It's like, why aren't we using him?
Where was he taken in the NFL draft?
I believe a second-round pick.
He was
early second.
IRL as well, yeah.
I mean,
but Tutu Atwell was a second-round pick, so
compare that to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who flashed at the end of the year. Like, all those injuries, you're a second-round pick. That's like the time, the second half of the year. It's
we're running.
Show out.
The biggest issue, like Vince said, is his play style and like just his stature and overall like game. He's a gadget. He's a gadget, and I've always hated those kind of guys on fantasy terms, unless they're like just stupid productive with their 7 touches or whatever. Like, then great, but like it just doesn't happen that often. Those kind of guys, I bet you the hit rate on a guy like him is maybe like 10%. Like, it can't be high. It's got to be very low.
They come off as roster clogs to me in Dynasty. It's just a guy that I can maybe start him 2 or 3 times a year, if that. I got to hit on those starts to begin with, and it's like it's just not worth it. The juice is not worth the squeeze. I said Trey Sermon is an F, and he's a bust, and he totally is, but I'd still rather have Trey Sermon than Rondale Moore, just because if that long shot hits, at least I could fucking start him. Now, this may be quoted, and you may make a gif out of it or a meme like you did Alex and his Naji Harris 2 years from now. But for now, I guess it's just not a player that
I don't really disagree with it. I never wanted Moore to begin with, so you're not
same. That's why this comes from last offseason watching. I'm just like, not for me.
Let's go ahead to the Bombers. Michael Carter pick at 2-2. He definitely flashed at times this year. There was certainly some games where I was like, all right, this guy's got some juice. He had a couple of games.
Team.
Yeah, terrible team. He had a couple of weeks where he was getting used like crazy in the receiving game. He had a 67-yard game, a 95-yard game with 14 targets on top of a couple of 3 games with over 15 carries, and all of those were quality games. So I think last year was kind of like a red shirt type of year for him, and maybe we really see what he's got, going into this season. Do we think he's a bell cow, though? Like, do we think that this is going to be a guy that, he's just a kind of, they throw him in the flex, or like, we really think he's going to be something?
It's kind of a tough thing to ask. I mean, there's only like 5 bell cows in the NFL?
Yeah, opportunity is everything. I think he could handle it, but I don't think he'll ever get it. I don't think any team will ever give him that.
20 opportunities a game, like 15.
Yeah, like a number one usage, essentially. Is what I'm saying.
I'll take that. I think he's going to be efficient with that going forward. Like, that's great.
Yeah, if he drops 15 carries, 5 catches a game or something like that, do you think that's going to be enough for him to get into, I don't know, say the top 20
absolutely.
backs?
That's enough to be fantasy relevant. It's just a matter of what the Jets do this year, where their offense continues to go. He's a good player, though. I think that this is a great pick at 2-2. He's looking like he might be the RB3 in this class as of now. He literally might be. I mean, if you had to tell me, would you rather a Michael Carter or Travis Etienne? I can go either way on that.
I'd probably take Carter.
That's what I'm saying. So
all of the young players on the Jets, I think they all got better by the end of the year. I mean, Zach Wilson's tough because he missed like a good chunk of the season, but like.
Yeah, but there were 400-yard passers. I think they had 3 400-yard passers, and none of them were Zach Wilson. That's bad. That's rough.
That's rough.
Yeah, I don't like to like pick on rookies when they miss a chunk of the year with like injury because it feels like it resets their year almost. But I mean,
the Jets are just a joke, though.
Elijah Moore obviously flashed. He looked great.
He was banged up too, Elijah Moore.
And then
the whole team was banged up.
Their offensive lineman that they took got better throughout the year too. Vera Tucker, he was bad to start the year. He improved too. So they're obviously doing a good job developing.
Corey Davis was banged up throughout the year. Jamison Crowder was banged up. Like they just never had the full unit out there.
I think Michael Carter will be a flex player with upside going forward. I mean, I think right now this year you could slot him into your flex in like the off season, like looking at your lineup and not be ashamed. And I think by week 10, we could have a situation where it's like, oh, their other running back's banged up. Michael Carter's getting 30 plus touches a game because that's the only way the Jets play football is to run the ball. So I think he's a great player to have. I wish I had him.
All right, so the first and second round, we're really getting into the nitty gritty on each one of these players, so it's taking a little bit longer than I expected. So let's go ahead and finish the second round.
It'll be getting really quick here. There's nothing to say about Terrace Marshall.
Yeah, Terrace Marshall kind of didn't do anything this whole year. I thought he was going to be a lot better.
Couldn't get anything from him.
I believed in Terrace Marshall too. I didn't. I'm scared for him because usually if you bust this hard as a first round, or not a first round, but if you bust this hard as a receiver, you're in your first year, usually you don't come back from it. It's the Jalen Reagor special. You just hate to see that. So I maybe there's a chance that he shows up with a better quarterback next year, but who knows? We'll see. We talked about Elijah Moore a little bit as well. I think we all like him.
Yeah, this is the best pick of the round, in my opinion. Between this and Michael Carter. But no, I think when we get to Amon St. Brown, we might have a little tussle here. I'm not buying him. I'm not buying what he's selling. I think he's totally repaid the value of that pick and is worth more than 2.7 right now. But I'm just not buying the long term in Detroit. I don't think he'll get the targets like that. I think they'll eventually have a rookie in there taking over for Goff.
I was actually talking about Fryermuth. I wasn't actually.
I thought you said Raw. I thought you said Raw.
So Elijah Moore, we all like him, right? So he's going to be good. We think he's a quality player. Great pick at 2-4. Trey Lance is literally a red shirt. Totally red shirt year for Trey Lance.
With Shanahan though, so it's worth having.
Yeah, it's just we're going to wait and see kind of thing. Amari Rogers, kind of a flop. Not a whole lot going on with Amari Rogers so far.
Nope.
And we kind of have to reserve some judgment to see maybe next year if he pops off. But it's gonna be hard if Rogers leaves.
No, and I hope Adams leaves at least, but then I can maybe get some more play time. But no, it's not looking good. Amari Rogers would not pay back 2.6 value. I'll tell you that.
Would you think that Rogers could be a potential drop candidate towards the roster cut, or is he just you're just holding?
No, if he got if like something happened and like he was like injured in training camp, like then we get to those IR cuts sometimes.
It could get questionable.
Injured. And that's
all right, so we've arrived at 2.7. So the Sun God himself really lit it up towards the end of last year after not really doing a whole lot in the first half of the year. So Sean, take it away. Let me hear your spiel.
All right, so I love the Sun God. He did great things.
It's a great name, dude.
I mean, me and Eric have talked about this before, but ideally for him, he's like the perfect second receiver on a team to me.
That's how I feel about him.
I don't think he's built to be a number one. He wasn't like a high yards per target guy. So I think he's more of like slot, play around a little bit, but he
feels some Robert Woods here.
I was gonna say like a Jarvis Landry maybe.
Yeah. That's the vibe I get. He was efficient. Like he did well with his targets. He scored a lot of touchdowns for that type of player, which isn't. He'll probably regress a little bit from that, but I mean, I like him.
You need players like this. The depth is the name of the game.
Yeah, back into the second too.
Yeah, you get a starter at the back end of the second. I think that's great. You can plug him in your play in your flex right now, and I think you're fine.
Oh, I did.
I did.
At 2.8, we got Pat Fryermuth. Really
Great pick by
really quality tight end. It's hard to find anybody that does anything at tight end, in a rookie year. So just to get, some touchdown production, and it looks like there's a future there too for him. So, with a better quarterback next year, it could actually take that next step and be a quality starting
Alex
tight end.
Is probably best value pick of this draft so far, at least, for sure.
Yeah, I think 2.8 is usually when we see like the back end of the seconds when we usually see that second tight end go off the board. Usually there's one in like the first half. So like this was the right value at the time, and it's still the right value now. So that was a good pick for sure.
Yeah, I think he returned way more than 2.8 if Alex tried to shop him.
Next up, you got Justin Fields at 2.9 to Sean's team. Kind of had some up and downs. There were some moments where it's like, okay, we got something here, and then there's some moments like, oh my god, what the hell's going on? I would definitely want to see what he does this year. I believe they hired Eberflus, didn't they? Today
that came out just a couple hours ago. Yes.
So that's questionable, considering you got a young quarterback. I would love to see who their OC is going to be before I really feel good about him next year.
I agree with that.
Still
a good player, though.
If he's coming from the Colts and they're like a run-first defensive team, it could be good. It could be good for Justin Fields if he's running the ball a lot. So that's my outside shot of hope, I think.
I would love to see them run like a Ravens type offense where I
mean,
as much as I would hate to watch it, I think it would be a good fit with Mooney and Kmet. And I think there's a lot of like translatable pieces, and Montgomery's good and Herbert's good. Like they have quality players there. They just got to figure it out. I don't know what it is.
I could even see them going the Cardinals route and getting a ton of wide receivers and maybe running more like what they do with Kyler.
Spread.
Yeah, spread him out and just let him run behind the.
We ran in college. It'd be great.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I think 2.9 for a quarterback is fine. Just like 2.5 for Lance is fine.
Considering where the quarterbacks went in this draft, I felt compelled.
Okay, if we got all these quarterbacks together, we would still be like, it could go any way. Like Lawrence isn't a full round better than Lance and Justin Fields at this point.
All right, so we got 2.10. Deony Brown literally did nothing this year. Just gonna hope for next year. I mean, he's a boomer bust guy anyway to start with, so you just take your shots on the chin.
Love to see him with Ryan Fitzpatrick this year.
That was the real hope, honestly. That was the great white hope for sure. I was hoping that there would be some more downfield passing there, because his big deal is deep threats for sure. All right, so as we get into the third and fourth round, I'm just going to kind of talk about the big names as opposed to the ones that just kind of
we don't know you go over everyone here.
We don't need to talk about everybody. So Kadarius Toney is one that definitely flashed this year. There was, I think, 3 or 4 games in a row where it's like, oh, this is pretty sweet. Like we like what we see. He looked like the most explosive player on the offense outside of he probably was at that time with Saquon. But Kadarius definitely looked like one of the positive pieces of that offense when he was healthy. So I love that pick for Dustin. I mean, any upside is good in the third round, right?
Yeah, the third round value here is great. I mean, it's a little suspect when we talk about that his GM and coach got fired, but we're talking about a first round pick in real life and a third round pick in Dynasty. You take any upside you can get, like you said. Yeah, it is. It has as much upside as Rondale Moore, a full pick earlier. So,
yep, totally true. Then we got Niko Collins and Tommy Tremble. Niko had a couple of flashy moments with Davis Mills, but there's still a lot of question marks there. Tommy Tremble is a rookie redshirt year, in my opinion, there. So no big things to talk about. Kenny Gainwell at 3.4 looks pretty good right now. I mean, he's probably not going to be a bell cow guy I think we talked about him on the last podcast.
Yeah, check the last episode. Me and James talked about him.
So we'll keep moving there. Mac Jones at 3.5. I feel like the dynasty circles are higher on Mac Jones than we are at this point. I looked at the rankings and like people love Mac Jones, and maybe it's just because it's a super flex type of deal and people are just interested in him as a QB2 or something. But like, I don't feel great about him. I mean,
I have nothing nice to say.
Anywho, moving forward, Josh Palmer at 3.6, probably a red shirty type of year for him as well. Had some flashes.
Great. I think he had a pretty good year overall.
I mean, for what he was supposed to do, yeah, for sure.
I guess I should say, let me rephrase this. Back to the third round pick argument. When you have a third round pick that even looks moderately decent as a rookie, you fucking count that as a W.
For sure.
And I feel like with the usage he kind of had at the end of the year, he got some good looks from Herbert. Where he was drafted, how raw he was coming out, I think he could definitely develop into a wide receiver too for them long term.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like the first, I think 13 games of the year, I'm looking at his thing right now. He just didn't have any usage. It was like 20%, 30%, something like that. But then towards the end of the year, they actually started using him more.
Mike Williams was out.
Mike Williams was out, exactly. And I think Williams is a free agent this year too. So that bodes well for Palmer if he doesn't come back. Then we got Zach Wilson. We talked about him a little bit, so we'll just skip over that. Ramondre Stevenson at 3.8 looks like a freaking hit. I mean, that looks great. I loved Ramondre coming out. I just was terrified of a Patriots running back, so I stupidly did not choose him. But kudos to Alex for that one.
Good value. He looked good. They love to run the ball. Their offense can run the ball. He's one of those guys, it's just a matter of him getting carries at the time. And if it's a December and he's getting carries, he could rattle off Alex a few wins and maybe even sneak him into the playoffs.
And he's a guy, if Damian Harris ever really goes down, either like instant value on the goal line for sure.
RB2 plus.
Yeah, at least an RB2 in that scenario. Tylan Wallace at 3.9. I got to be honest, I love me some Tylan Wallace. I still do. I just don't think that he's ever going to get the opportunity. That's the sad part.
Yeah, you don't always hit the dartboard, you know?
No, especially we're getting into the fourth round too. So like you can't be too hard on yourself down here.
Actually, I missed the dartboard on all 3 of my late round picks. Thank you very much.
There's still time. Cuba Hubbard at 3.10. Actually solid. I mean, you got the handcuff there. I believe that they're probably not going to take too many more investments in the running back position at this point. So he probably looks like the number 2 heading into next year. So, I mean, at worst, you get a good handcuff out of that. I like that pick for Scavelli.
Yeah, I mean, James and I talked about this, that he probably should have been the pick at 3-4, so he would have had his CMC handcuff.
That is probably true. Yeah, I don't know why.
I thought he was going to pick when we were doing the draft.
I think we all thought that Hubbard was going to hire.
Gainwell. He had a high grade on Kenny Gainwell, and so he went with his board, which I totally respect.
You got to stay true to your board. We've always
got to stay true to your board, yeah. But you know, having the handcuff definitely is just smart football, as we like to say. So no shame in having conviction. You can get away with a couple of those, especially in the third round. But having your handcuff has value too.
All right, so we're moving on to pick the fourth round now. We got 4-1. Des Fitzpatrick didn't even make the team out of training camp, I believe. So that's going to be a flop.
Re-signed and scored. Did he score a touchdown?
I think he got re-signed at some point, but either way, not great.
Not good.
Kind of a toss away there. Javian Hawkins at 4.2 was also a training camp cut. I believe he right now is on the Rams, I want to say, but I mean, not really. No, yeah, get your Super Bowl, but not relevant really for us. Chris Evans, James and I talked about him last episode. We both like Chris Evans. We think he's got some pop and juice, and I think for
Cincinnati
James,
running back, correct?
He is, yes. And I believe with James having Mixon, I like the fact that he has him as well.
Got his handcuff looking good.
It actually made sense there. D. Eskridge, Sean 4.4. I literally haven't seen his name since the draft. So if you want to talk about him, if there's any flash I must have missed, I don't know.
He missed like half the season with a concussion. He's one of those tiny guys. I don't know if he'll be on my team next year.
Speaking of tiny guys, Tutu Atwell, Tutu Trashwell, as I call him. I weigh more than he does. That you can't take that. It's just not acceptable. That's not a second
round pick in real life.
I know not only do the Rams hate their picks when they do have them, they just say, fuck it, we're going to take some shithead. Like they don't care. Really do. They just don't care. If you can remind me, who was the 4-6 pick? Because I knew it was some sort of free agent
I'll tell you, it was Kendrick Bourne.
It was Kendrick Bourne, yes.
Yeah. He didn't even make the team. Didn't make the team. Yeah.
He
wasn't even bad. He was serviceable. But yeah, he just couldn't make it.
I kept Tatwell.
You know who I kept? I kept like Salvin Ahmed over him as like the handcuff to Myles Gaskin. So it didn't work out. But
all 3 of those guys over the first 5 picks of the 4th round.
Yeah. It's tough.
4-7 Larry Roundtree. I don't really think he did anything as far as I'm aware. 4-8 Davis Mills. This is classic Dan finding value. Davis Mills, a nice little long-term, maybe this hits prospect. Who knows? 4-8, you can't do a whole lot worse than that.
Might be their starter next year.
I would argue he's going to be the starter. I think he showed enough pop and flash to give him a shot. Why not?
Hold on. Did Davis Mills have more fantasy points than
Trevor Lawrence?
That is questionable.
Who wants to look up who? I'll look up Davis Mills.
I can handle one.
No, Trevor Lawrence had him more. He had more. He was QB 23. Davis Mills was 28. But not bad for a 4-round fucking difference.
That's incredible, though. How many? Wait a second.
More wins than Deshaun Watson last year.
So Trevor Lawrence had 12 touchdowns. How many did Mills have?
16.
He had 4 touchdowns. So basically, Trevor Lawrence got by with volume stats because Tyrod Taylor started, 3 or 4 games.
That's brutal. Brutal.
That's not good.
Oh, my God. I didn't even think about that. That's a great point there. Good call on that.
Week 18 against Tennessee, 301 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's more than Trevor Lawrence had in like 2 months.
Against Tennessee. Tennessee's quality. Oh, my gosh. Anywho, 4-9, Seth Williams. I don't think he made it out of camp. I don't think there was anything there. And then 4-10 was Anthony Schwartz, who I actually did notice at times this year. I was like, okay.
Couple bursts.
Yeah.
Their team was just so stagnant on offense. They could only run.
They got nothing from a passing attack standpoint. So that was, Mr. Irrelevant looking decent there this year. And we are right at the hour mark. So that was actually.
Before we end this, let me give out who's
We do
your
have another
favorite
segment
draft.
for the record.
I know who my favorite draft is, but who's your favorite draft?
Justin,
not a bad pick. Eric?
It's either Justin or it's one of the Austins.
It's one of the Austins. I picked Dustin because he got so many flex-worthy players that can develop long-term.
Yeah, if you look back at this first round, it's Devonte Smith, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore, Kadarius Toney, and whatever Roundtree you just throw away. But you got 4 guys that basically are flex players at this point. I mean, you could start any one of those.
Just in terms of the value, I mean, Justin had the 2 top 3 picks, so of course his draft is probably better on paper, but you can't mess those picks up unless you're Alex. So
but they could both be the number 1 at their position in like 2 years.
No, I know that's why long term he'll have more points, but I mean just the value that Dustin got in the spots he got him, he maneuvered a lot of landmines, and he
also traded 3-2 and 3-3 for 2. I remember during this draft as well. So I mean, I don't know if you believe in Tua still or not, but
I do. I'm a Tua stan.
He's a Tua stan. I'm losing hope.
I don't believe in Jalen Hurts either, by the way. So.
Right.
Anywho, so let's play some Would You Rather real quick before we get off. Javonte Williams or DeAndre Swift?
Javonte.
I would take Javonte, but I'm biased. So
yeah, I think it's close, but you got to go Javonte.
Less injury issues, and he's younger.
Yeah, I
better name for a running back, DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, but that's.
But
not
I do like the name Javonte. DeAndre Swift. Like if your last name is Swift as a running back, you were born to play the position.
Especially his style is very swift. It fits.
Yeah, if he was a bruiser, it wouldn't work. I think he'd bust. It was DeAndre Truck or something. I wouldn't want that guy. All right, let's go to the next one. Josh Jacobs or Antonio Gibson?
Give me Gibson.
I think I'd take Jacobs.
We're towards the end of the line on Jacobs. I think he's safer for a year or 2, but I feel like I can get at least maybe 3 to 5 more years of Antonio Gibson, especially with a better quarterback. I think Jacobs' best years may be behind him, so I would take Gibson.
Yeah, J.D. McKissick gone. Antonio Gibson's going to flash even more in the receiving game next year. I will take Gibson.
I think Jacobs is still 24. It seems weird. But it's just wild to me but they're very close in value. I think I just side with Jacobs. I guess if I were looking at a contender perspective, probably.
Jacobs.
Yeah, that's what I said. For the now points, I think Jacobs will have a better year next year, but they're close. That's why I think I take the long term.
Jacobs is gonna be that guy in like 5 years where we're like, holy shit, this guy's still in the league, but he's still not even 30 yet.
Yeah, he's gonna be like one of those guys. It's like
Mike Evans.
Mike Evans he came into the league at like 19, I think, or some shit. It was like ridiculous, and he's still rolling along. No, I don't think so. Deontay Johnson or Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Come on, man. Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson. Some people are still high on Deontay Johnson. I've seen him ahead of AJ Brown on some people's
It's
boards
crazy.
and
Like
stuff.
I actually pulled this, so I always pull these from like random sites, like where they're close to, and like Amon-Ra St. Brown is dangerously close to Deontay Johnson on a lot of sites. It's
So
crazy.
we're saying I should trade him. Got it.
It seems like the value might be there to
Trade
trade.
high. Let him
And
fly.
Joe Burrow or Kyler Murray?
Joe Burrow. I'm a Joey B stan all day.
I'm a big Joey Burrow fan at this point. It's hard not to be. I mean, who doesn't like Joe Burrow? There's not many people probably. There can't be a whole lot.
Balls out. He's super nice to everyone. He's down to earth. Love him.
Smoke cigars in the locker room. You gotta love the guy. All right, that's gonna do it for this podcast. So we covered a lot of stuff. We covered the rules. We did a name that bust. We did a team name change. We did a rookie review, and we did Would You Rather. So we did quite a bit in about an hour. So
shout out Justin Hunter.
What's that?
Wherever you are. Said shout out Justin Hunter wherever you are.
Yeah, just
You're playing football. So.
I gotta come up with a really good name that bust for the next one. I'm gonna really try. I mean, I can't. I thought this one would be a little easier, but now I'm like searching to do more.
You need to add like a little jingle to the beginning of it.
Like a name that bust jingle. Yeah. I'll see what I can do.
You know what would be even cool is if you find ones that are like so crazy, like how we both were like Deontay Johnson, and then you show rankings like, well, Matthew Berry has the other guy, like just as like.
Oh yeah.
That'd be interesting. I'll keep my eye out. If I see anything outrageous, I'll let you know.
Yeah, if you see anything, just send it over. Or if you have anything, just send it over.
One last one before we go. Michael Carter or Saquon Barclay?
You gotta go Barclay.
The guy at CBS Sports put Michael Carter over him.
Because of
I was
Savage.
like, get the fuck out of here. In Dynasty rankings too, but still.
Dynasty, he's still like in a Dynasty startup, where do you take Barclay? Like third?
Third round at best, but even then, that's being generous. I think.
Are you taking Michael Carter in the third? Probably not.
No, I'm not. I'm not taking either of those players there, so that's why, yeah. But no, it's just
that blows my mind. Holy shit! I would not have thought of that one.
I would like wherever Michael Carter went in a draft, but I would never take Barkley where he would go in a draft.
That's very true. Like Barkley's price is always way too high at this point. It seems like. I mean, I've taken Barkley in redraft every year, and it just burns me every year. So I'm just
sorry for you.
I think I'm done at this point. I mean, it's been too many years. Especially, I think I took him one pick over like Jonathan Taylor or something, so that hurt. Anywho, that's gonna do it for episode 24. Appreciate both of y'all hopping on, and we will try to get another one of these out in the very near future. And if you have any ideas at all for content that you want to see, any sort of topics you want to talk about or anything, just hit me up. Let me know what you think, and we'll see if we can make it happen here on the podcast. So we'll see y'all next time.
Oh, Vince, congrats on the Homan.
Oh, my goodness. Goodness. Right. Coming out
Thankfully, thanks for you. You gave me that $100 out because you didn't want to have punishment, so I got that.
Squidward. All right, that's going to do it. We'll see y'all later.